at 6:38. Dominic Thomas, Chairman of the Housing Committee. We have a quorum of members present. And the first thing, you sent out the minutes, Mary, so the first thing would be to accept a motion to approve the minutes of the April meeting.
So moved.
Do I have a second? Made by Beck, seconded by David. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? None. The minutes are approved. Public comment. Are there any members of the public that wish to comment
I'm here,
tonight?
but no comment, thank you.
Okay, thank you. And there are no other members?
In and of itself.
Yeah. There are no other members of the public here, so we can proceed on from public comment. Comments of the chair. I just want to make a couple of points, and leading into the next item. But driving around town, it's going to be our job to get public opinion on what's going on. And you drive around town right now, and you see two signs on people's lawns. One, which is on my son's lawn, which is the graduation of my grandson from Amity, where they have apparently gone away from the balloons in an effort to save the environment by not having plastic balloons anymore, and they now have signs. The other one is the red circle slash over the 26 Beecher, which probably outnumber the graduates somewhere around 3-1, 4-1 at this point, going back and forth. And full disclosure, the individual never got through to me, but the individual who represents it called my office in an effort, I think, to talk to me about representative, and I informed the secretary, no, I'm not even, I don't, the rule in the office is if somebody calls on Woodbridge, I don't do anything in Woodbridge. But it's obviously a very controversial.
Do you want to sign, because I have an extra?
Huh?
Do you want to sign, because I have an extra?
Well, yeah, I try to stay out of that. But what's interesting, a lot of besides the humidity, the amount of that, what's interesting is when you go through our Office of Policy and Management guidelines and growth and everything, one of them is for us to obtain public opinion. And that's an evidence of the strongness of the public opinion. And I'm just going to state this because somebody made a comment to me when the first application was withdrawn. Okay? And I have the advantage of doing this for a living, so they said to me, it's gone. I said, oh no, it isn't. I said, they will pull it out of the wetlands, increase the density and
Right.
increase the height
Yep.
by shrinking their footprint
Yep.
and come back in.
Exactly.
Because that is what a developer will do when faced with what appears to be, to the developer, serious wetlands issues that could be of an issue. Which apparently is what he did, because I guess it's going from 3-story to 6 stories or whatever the chart does. And that's what the thing is. And it's an 8-30G. And I will conclude this comment with this statement. And it's something that I don't expect everybody to go along with at the beginning. If you give developers opportunities to do it without 8-30G on property that they think is, they can develop well, they will choose that over doing an 8-30G. The vast majority of them will do that. 8-30Gs tend to benefit people like me, you know what I mean? Because they tend to get legally involved all the time, and then therefore you have more appeals that you have to do. But anyway, I just wanted to point it out. I noticed that it's an interesting thing, and I noticed that there's obviously a groundswell, which is something we need to address as we go along.
Let me interrupt you, but you said most developers, but we have a developer now who is not adhering to that idea, and he's building a massive playing a massive building under an 830G. So that's not a consideration for
I don't mean to say I know every developer. I have no
No, I'm
recognition
just
of them. The people that I deal with, I've talked to some of the people that I deal with, and they have their eye on Woodbridge, and but they're standing into the background. If you opened up, I have only been against the guy, the person who did the parcel next to the Parkway. Okay,
Fountain Street.
Angelo, huh?
Fountain Street.
Fountain Street. Angelo Malisi, okay? I observed it from a distance. And he did try to work, he tried to work with things and everything. People didn't want it, but remember, that was a parcel that the Affordable Housing Committee identified with the help of staff as a possible part. He did not go into the middle of the residential area. Like I talked about at the last meeting, and by the way, it's sold. Somebody bought that 7-acre and barn. Remember I told you about that I was driving down, somebody bought it.
Yep.
And apparently somebody, I don't know if it's him or, but again, the temptation is, for those people that want to do 8-30G, is you have Beecher Road, you know what I mean, because of the sewer and water. But a lot of them would prefer to go elsewhere and find a place where they can develop it more in line. Not everybody. There are some, I know developers, and I don't really have those, and the ones that I represent a lot, who just run in and try to do 8-30G right away. And they do. They go in and they say, that's what I'm just going to do. I'm not going to waste the time. Time is money. But I don't recognize the name of the individual, as a developer. In other words, I haven't heard him developing around this area. His name hasn't popped up. He could very well be a successful developer from someone else. He has chosen to take what is a challengeable piece of property and try to cram it in. The problem is, and this is what I think part of our job is educating the public, this is what 8-30G is about. It flips the burden. It makes it difficult. And whenever you can take the pressure off, whenever you can let developers go in and work elsewhere, it might be beneficial, because one of our jobs as we get down farther, one of our jobs is to identify other properties and increase housing stock. And as we'll get,
So with regard to this property, are you suggesting that we enter the discussion in some manner, or that we
No.
help educate the public on 830G currently, or
No, I
anything
don't
else?
think it's our job to get involved in any controversial projects that are existing. That takes away from our commission. It's our job to learn from those projects ourselves, to learn what's going on and have an honest discussion with the public about it, understand the public. And you can understand what the objections are. It's obvious, you know what I mean? But it's our job to educate the people. I mean, like I said, I knew exactly what the developer was going to do, not because I knew the developer,
No.
because that's what developers do when they're faced with a no. I have to say that most of the developers that I represent, I'm going through the zoning as a contingency of their contract to buy the property, which is a lot different than if you already own it.
Right.
And you've already put your money into it. And that's a big difference in
Yeah.
most situations.
It's been
But I don't wanna-
suggested, it's been suggested that that's what he's doing in anticipation of selling the property with the approvals already.
But he owns it.
He owns it now.
Right, yeah, that's what I mean. Most of mine that I deal with would be in contract to buy it from the property owner, and there would be a zoning contingency.
Contingency, yeah.
And they go through that.
Yeah.
And then finally, I just want to say that and we're going to talk about the housing guidelines. One thing that I noticed in reading through everything and talking to some other towns going forward, this 25-1 and the changing of the regs and all this stuff has been like an overwhelming tsunami on a lot of towns. We need, I think, as a committee to discuss trying to put some guide rails on what we're doing, you know what I mean, and not go helter-skelter. So we need to try to focus on what are some guide rails, not to eliminate things, but to focus on what things we need to focus on right now and as we're getting forward. And I'll get onto that later. And that segues into the reason of number 5, which is the 2026 legislative session in which nothing happened on housing. Nothing. All of the bills, the one that we were very interested in, the Golden Girls bill, the ADUs, although Woodbridge has, in my opinion, one of the most enlightened ADU provision, but there was other provisions in there that would have an impact upon us, on room rentals and things of that nature for seniors. That bill got enormous support, I believe, in the House, the Senate. It went to the Senate, and it got bumped back to committee, and it never got voted on. And a lot of the other ones did not get voted on. And I think part of it was this requirement to change the regulations by July 1st. There was, as one person put it, a shortage of paper bags because everybody was hyperventilating over it. And they had a provision which would have extended the time frame. And that failed, and basically it was a trade-off. Okay, we're not going to let you extend the time frame, but we're not going to overburden you with more statutes at this point. We'll see what happens in the next session. We'll see. And if anybody has any questions about the legislative, I mean, it just, the housing got pushed back into nowhere.
Are we still on comments from the chair?
Huh?
Are
Yes.
we-
Yes.
Yeah. You attended the Housing and Conservation meeting? Did you attend the Housing and Conservation meeting?
Yes, I did.
What was your takeaway from that? What did you think about that?
On the housing conservation, I don't know who else attended it. Did you attended it, Mary?
We had quite a lot of people, both from conservation and from.
Yeah, I think Lou.
Lou was there, Tim Austin was there, Elaine was there, Mika was there, Barbara Hagen from conservation.
It was very interesting. One of the main speakers was the planner from the company that P&Z has hired, Teisch Planning. John Gutkowski was the speaker. The speakers were very good, and they talked about addressing how do you get housing with and still address conservation. Okay? And I got my 2 cents in towards the end and a comment, because I remember them, which is basically one of the problems, one of the issues there is if you take towns and you go more to cluster housing, you can then get more conservation that's naturally. The most anti-conservation in the past, and John Gutkowski said this, not me, the planner said this. He said, in the past, the foible, the whatever you want to call it, old wives' tale, was that large single-family housing, large lot, single-family housing, was a form of conservation. And of course, that's proven. My argument against that has always been, what do you do on an 1.5 acre lot and you have 3 boys and they want a wiffle ball field? You know what I mean? Which is what I did in Oxford. I built a wiffle ball field. In Oxford it was great because most of it was cleared because of the septic. But then I knocked down a few more trees. I didn't have wetlands or issues. I knocked it down so they could have a nice big, full-fledged, 3 bases, outfield and everything wiffle ball field. Mm-hmm. And that's what you do. I could do it. It was perfectly legal. And that is one of the issues. But they talked about how to work together, how to protect wetlands, and work together for housing. It shouldn't be a negative thing. There, I don't think, and Mary, and you were there, I don't know if the comment, they didn't go forward in one of the things like on wetlands, which is when you're building in the upland review area, you have to prove to the Wetlands Commission that there's no adverse impact upon the wetlands. So it becomes an expert thing, okay? So sometimes now you want to do something to pull your development away from it, okay? And what runs into a problem when you pull it away from it are the bulk standards and your regulations. And that's basically what they were saying, that this is an area that needs to be worked on in the town. So if you make your bulk standards flexible, you can then conserve, protect the wetlands, and still have the building, if your bulk standards are not that strict. And this wasn't brought up, but there was a couple of the lawyers on there who sit on the same group that I sit on. The biggest thing we're going to be pushing again next year is to change the variance statute in the state of Connecticut to allow people to obtain a variance to vary bulk standards for environmental reasons.
What are bulk standards?
Bulk standards are your setback, 75 feet setback,
Yep.
your impervious coverage, your square and everything like that. And you have to have a hardship. It is an extremely difficult level of proof. About 90% of your variances that are granted are illegal anyway. But what we felt is, and this goes back a few years, we should, a developer, a builder, an individual should be able to get a variance to do something that protects the wetlands. And the best example is this. Right now, you can get a variance to put an addition on your house because your septic is over here on the left-hand side. And if you wanted to expand, you'd still be within the setback, but you can't put your addition over the septic. So you want to put it on the other side, which will be within the setback. Okay? That's someone who's adding an in-law apartment. Think of it for us, adding an in-law apartment, doing something else. Not going to be able to do it. And are they going to be able to prove a hardship? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. They have still the use of their house. There are ZBAs that would say, go up and everything like that. What we want to do is change the statute that you can now go in and say, I want a variance because I have wetlands on the other side, and even though I can do a setback, I'd rather put it on this side where the setback is and not go into the upland review area for the wetlands. So that is an example of the conservation, getting conservation but still not having it impact housing negatively.
But that's a fairly benign change.
Yeah.
Pushing the setback. With the bulk standards, the thing that you failed to mention was the height. That's limited in the bulk standard.
Well, bulk standards, that usually doesn't impact wetlands or conservation or anything like that. And however, one of the points is going up and clustering are two things that can save conservation.
Right.
And they're two things that are controversial. And it's something we may have to address down the road. How do you manage the two? And then you allow people to go up in a certain situation so they can avoid, and I'm not referring to 26, Beach Road, that's not what I mean. But on any other parcel, you allow them to go up or, to do that. And the other thing is, on single family, if you cluster the single family, and you do two things that are usually you give them a density bonus, and a lot of developers would prefer to have private roads. So you do those two things, you can then preserve a portion of that 10-acre parcel that you couldn't do it if you went in there with 1-acre lots or 2-acre lots. Those are the kind of things in the conservation.
Yeah. One of the things that interested me about the meeting was, I was listening for this because we had a meeting with for the conservation.
Does that air conditioning need to be on anymore? Anybody?
Okay.
Because it is
Turn it off.
It's
And see,
impacting.
turn it off and see what happens. Maybe turn it down. Turn the blower down.
My technical expertise. The one with the circle and the line is the one you
It's
hit.
off.
Okay. Well, that, I
Okay,
think that
so what
makes
I was
it
saying
easier
was,
to hit. Go
last
ahead.
summer, we had a program, again, for housing and conservation locally. We produced that. And I understand that there was some concern on the part of the Conservation Commission members who were there, thinking that it was really too focused on housing and not enough on conservation. And that was one of the messages of this meeting, is all of these meetings. You know, you have to have a good balance so that people don't feel like they're being railroaded, and that everybody has to listen to each other and accommodate each other's concerns, blah, blah. Well, when this one started off, I thought its approach was, the first thing John said was, here are the 5 things that you're going to always, you know, that are most commonly, issues are most commonly raised by conservationists in opposition to housing development. So that was how they started the thing, and here is how you respond to that. And I shall be interested to hear more about what the conservation people thought of the approach. Now, that by the end of the meeting, of course, it was, this was kind of leveled out a bit, and not a bit, but the emphasis was rather more on working together. I thought Kathy Hunter asked a really good question that unfortunately they didn't have time to answer because there were lots and lots of questions. Her question was what to do about the problem that the state has set us by giving contradictory directions about emphases, requirements for conservation and also for housing. And we hear locally quotations about what the state expects of us in terms of expanding open space. And then we also get from the state expectations about expanding housing. So
Right.
unfortunately, we didn't get an answer to that
But, you
question.
know, the discussion that I've heard tonight really hasn't focused on where the recommendations of where housing should go, which is in the area which has transportation and has services,
Preferably, yeah.
preferably, right. And my feeling is if that is available to develop, that should be the first area we should take a hard look at. You know, rehabilitating properties, changing commercial to residential, putting additional floors on top of existing businesses, you know, put in middle housing where possible, where there's open space. You know.
Yeah.
There's precious little of any of that.
Well,
Here,
there's
here.
very little, but there's not nothing. You know, there's not nothing.
I think that was the main, I would have said that was the main message that they were trying to present.
have
Namely,
extra
the
minutes,
important
do
thing
we?
if you're going to
Print them out.
conservation,
No, I didn't.
but we already passed them, so you don't need to worry.
We let the record
That-
reflect
that the-
have arrived, we now have full
We grab a
commission.
piece of paper
That-
from Lou.
David, that's a very good point.
Good.
Here's the other issue.
Because you weren't here, and I
You're
thought you
talking about higher density housing, multifamily housing.
Yes.
Part of our task, as I read it,
here's some more.
is to also address the need for single family housing.
Right.
I mean, people might say, oh, what do you mean single family? No, we are trying to address single family housing. There's a different market in single family. That market is for smaller units, you know, the existing larger ones do it. But right now, many of the builders are out there building smaller single families, and they're building them on smaller lots. So, for example, you had in the D, did I not hit the right button? No,
That's all right, we're good now.
okay. In the D zone, a few years ago, several years, they developed, I think they're all duplexes, right? abutting back of Merritt Avenue, right behind the,
From the
gas
filling
station.
Yes.
Right.
yeah, right below the thing.
They're all
They d-
duplexes.
Huh? They're all
They're
duplexes.
Yeah.
They're all built.
No,
They're
they're
all
not.
sold,
they're
huh?
not all
Not built.
Not all built?
Not
They
all
ran-
built.
They ran into some trouble and they built two, as I understand it, two duplexes, that's it.
Well, there's more houses back there than the two that they built along going in. Well, they're right behind my son's house. I can see them. There's two or three
Where are we
houses
talking
there.
about? Where are they
On
located?
Merritt,
On Merritt,
Oh,
off of Merritt, behind. They built two going in.
Yeah.
I know that there was an area of wetlands that they had an issue with
right.
as you get close to the
Right.
parkway. But what I'm trying to say is that's the kind of lot and house a lot of builders are looking for.
Yeah.
So we need to look at, as we go forward, we're not doing all this all the time. As we go forward, we need to look, when we're looking for the inventory, it's not just where can you build high density. It's where can you build single family, and how should you build single family? And the conservation issue, should you build single family then cluster? Should that be a suggestion? Right now, with the technology of septics, you can do septics easily, and wells on half-acre lots. That's being done all over. And it's mainly due to the technology. And when you do that, you then go back to the conservation issue, because now if you entice them to do a subdivision but cluster, you now save the other land. You don't let them cluster the whole land. You don't change the whole land. You just give them a bonus on density. Hopefully they save the town, especially by doing private roads, and the rest of it's conservation easement. It's left in its natural state. No one needs to maintain it, or anything like that. But we need to do both. We need to look at single family and look at high density. So there may be areas in the town where we can develop it. There's one thing I learned 4 years ago when we did the plan is there's an awful lot of unbuildable areas in Woodbridge, in the single-family home areas, due to wetlands, due to topography and everything like that. That
And
makes it
ledge.
difficult. And
And
ledge.
Yeah.
It makes it difficult. It's not some easy former farmland area where you can build like crazy. And but anyway, that ties in the two things that you're talking about. That's conservation, and because it is both high density and single family. We need to look at all housing, and that's what the guidelines say. Because there's nothing in the legislative session that they passed, that would move us to the housing growth guidelines, and I sent you the preliminary ones that we had looked at originally, and I was looking at some things that there should be upcoming, but if you look at the 9th page of it, they talk about parcel and zone identification. It says mapping standards will be forthcoming, from OPM, and it talks about diverse housing types, a range of unit sizes and number of bedrooms. So we're looking at single family. Where should you put single family housing? Where should you put it? And should we recommend that they change the zoning to allow more cluster type
Sorry,
somewhere?
sorry, Dominic, what handout?
Oh, I'm sorry. This is the one that's been before the preliminary housing growth guidelines from the
Oh, the
Office
guidelines
of
document.
and
I
Office
don't
of
have that.
Preliminary Plans, and from OPM, and one of the things is we should expect other stuff to be coming down by July 1st. So as soon as I'll try to use some of the contacts. They have until July 1st is their deadline, OPM's deadline, to come down with, I think, some of the mapping and these are supposed to be helps to us before we
Guidelines,
decide
yeah.
where to go, helps to us, mapping, websites, mapping standards. David, right along the lines of what you're saying, how to identify higher density parcels. But that, I thought they were gonna be out by now, but I haven't been able to locate them. I guess they're gonna be out by July 1st, and they will be helpful for us. But, with respect to that, to the guidelines that we do have, they do talk about here that, for example, they want us to develop a land inventory to assist identifying zones and parcels that may be developed or redeveloped to meet the affordable housing needs. And I just don't want people to get hung up on the affordable capital A too much, or anything like that, because affordable small a, increasing the housing stock, impacts it. And recently, there have been enormous amount of studies that came down. I think it's related to the fact that the Congress is actually considering a housing bill. And that what has happened in some of the Sunbelt areas where the rents went crazy and the housing prices went crazy, where they went through housing booms and rent, both multifamily and single family, everything stabilized. It did not go down. You know what I mean? It all of a sudden it stabilized, and so the rent increases were minimal compared to the way they were, simply by increasing the stock, the supply. And that's one of the things they talk about in here. It says mapping standards will be forthcoming. It talks about, diverse housing types that we need to take a look at. And it talks about developable land inventory. And again, OPM is supposed to provide us with, what does it say here? OPM's Geographical Information System Office, GIO, will provide data, mapping standards, and further guidance later in 2026.
So we should get going with the agenda.
Oh, I
Start.
thought we were on the.
No, this is, yeah, this,
Oh, did you already?
we're on,
You
we're
already
on,
did the minutes
on number 6. Yeah, we did the minutes.
before 7?
Yeah, no, it's 6:30. The meeting started at 6:30.
Oh, we thought 7, that's why we
Oh, I'm
weren't
so
here.
sorry. I thought
That
it
was on the
seven.
agenda that I sent out.
I thought Mary was
Yeah, but
kidding
we-
when she said we already did the minutes.
No,
Oh, sorry.
yeah.
Sorry.
Well, no, we just went through, you
I'm a
missed.
creature of habit, I sit in the same seat
Yeah.
all the time. I always sit on
At
this
7 o'clock.
side.
And you thought it was
And
something.
I go
Yeah,
by
you
the
get
old
in
time,
this room,
but-
you come to this room and you think, oh, we're back where we were.
Sorry, guys. Okay.
Let me ask a question.
Onward.
though. I agree that affordable housing is important, whether it's with a small a or a capital A. But does having affordable housing with a small a help us if there's action in the courts under state law?
No.
No.
Well, are you talking about
That's-
in the case that's pending?
I mean, in any case. in the
Any-
future.
well,
I'm not
when
worried
you look at the
about-
cases
I'm not
pending-
asking about a specific.
If we are promoting housing, okay, that is a factor that would be considered. The issue in that case is they're trying to turn Woodbridge into Mount Laurel. Okay, so they're trying to bring up the fact that Woodbridge intentionally does not engage in legislation or activity that promotes affordable housing for everybody. It creates a strata like that, and therefore they are asking the courts then to impose a standard, and that is what happened at Mount Laurel. Again, it was not an overnight thing. It was 1978. It came about. Then legislation followed the statute. Then there was another case in 82, and I think another one in 88, that all supplemented Mount Laurel.
Right. But I'm not asking about current litigation.
Yeah.
I'm concerned about what would happen in the future, or what, for example, Beecher Road. I mean, if we could have, would something like that be possible if we just had small a rather than large a?
Well, you're going to have it anyway. You're never, first of all, everybody, you're never going to reach 10%. None of the towns are going to reach 10%. Not just Woodbridge, none of them are going to reach 10%. So you're always going to have 8-30G hanging over you. Okay?
Not if you have a
Well,
moratorium,
not-
though.
not-
Huh?
Not if we had a moratorium.
Moratorium's only a
Yeah.
couple years.
Yep.
You only get a few years, and that's it.
It can be,
And then you're back again, huh?
it can be extended and it gives you time to work.
The- Remember, it's not, the decision is by the Department of Housing, okay? And the towns that have gotten it, other towns that have gotten it, have developed a substantial amount of affordable housing. Some of it rammed down their throat by 8-30G, some of it voluntary.
Right. But the statute is 2%.
Huh?
2% to get a moratorium.
Well, it's a point system.
I
You have
don't,
to-
yeah, it's a point system.
you
I
have
don't,
to
it's
accrue
not a
certain amount of
percentage.
points.
It's not based on a percentage.
Yeah.
And you gotta be very careful. Like, for instance, Build CT, 20-year restricted housing, counts, the points for those count towards your 10%. They do not count towards your moratorium. So you gotta be, and that is one thing, for instance, at some point, to understand all of this, we need to bring in, and he's talked before, Mike Santoro, who is from Department of Housing.
Well,
And,
I forget
Can-
exactly,
can I-
it's something like 75 points. And each unit of housing is worth 1 point unless you get a bonus for middle housing or increased density. I mean, there are some.
yeah,
It's very specific.
That's why
The
we need-
guidelines are-
honestly,
So
that's why we
it
need
can
to
be
bring in Mike
actually,
Santoro.
it could be less than 2%, actual the number of units to be eligible for that moratorium.
Yeah, but again, we need to ask somebody like Mike Santoro. I don't, it is a complex
So-
system. It isn't something where you can open up a book and just say, okay,
Right,
here
but-
it is.
I mean, but
Here's
that
the-
was pretty straightforward in the in the plan.
And what, and,
In the housing plan, when they were talking about
Housing growth.
how you calculate the points for
Towards the
each-
moratorium, yeah.
Toward the moratorium.
all right, I'm willing to look at it, but I mean, when I do it, I'll be very honest with you. When, any questions about a moratorium and points, I pick up the phone and call Mike
We're s-
Santoro.
We're so far away from it, we don't.
Yeah, I mean, I just pick
Can
up
I,
the phone.
can I had the impression when I was reading it, and you please clarify for me, I thought that the Council of Governments was doing the mapping, and that would go to OPM and then it would come to us. Is that the sequence? Do we have a role to
Okay,
play
no,
before
they're gonna
that
come down,
happens?
no, we get to look at it, it's gonna come
Yeah,
down, we're gonna be
yeah,
going through
yeah.
the Council of Governments, but what I'm
Okay.
saying is,
So
when you
I
look at
just
the
wondered if-
preliminary things, this is when they're gonna be coming down with templates and everything like that.
Right, but we don't do anything before we get there.
We're not gonna do
Okay,
any of
that was what I was.
No, no, we're not out there doing, this is what, they need to come out with the next set of guidelines.
Do we
I
have
think by
any
July
idea?
1st.
Yeah, and they're supposed to do that by this summer, right?
July 1st.
Right. Do we have any sense of where they are in that project?
According to what I've heard, they closed down the public comment on the, and now they're ready to come out. The public comment closed down on April 30th.
For
Public comment to OPM on
Oh, that,
the draft
yes.
guidelines.
Oh, no,
On the draft
I just wonder where they are.
guidelines, yes.
I don't even know whether SCROG has succeeded in hiring the individual that they were,
I've been trying to
planning to hire.
keep work with them to see if we can.
I was just
Yeah.
realizing nobody's talking to them about this.
Ian, I gotta
tomorrow.
call Ian
Yeah,
up and get an
Ian.
update.
Okay.
Ian is the individual there, because once he's hired somebody, I wanna get them here to speak to us, you know,
Yeah.
as quickly as
Yeah, okay.
possible.
When you mentioned Ian, is that Ian from
Ian.
Squag?
Ian from
Yeah.
Scrog.
Okay, that was- okay.
I can't remember his last name, Mark.
That's okay,
Yeah,
just,
yeah.
I call me in from Squag.
Yeah. But anyway, because that, again, I want to put some guide rails on what we're doing, so we're not going all over the place. But we'll need more once we get the guidelines down. We'll know more once we get the guidelines down. I guess under legislative issues, Monday, I sent out to everybody the zoning regulations that the Planning and Zoning Commission is proposing. They're online. I've been trying to go through them a little bit more carefully and this is in line with what David brought up as to where we should have housing. We're talking about middle housing. The regulations that they're proposing are very detailed. They actually refer to design requirements established therein. And I'm trying to figure out, and may go to the meeting just to bring it up as a citizen, whether or not in the GB developed DV1 zones, whether or not our downtown area, whether you can put housing on top of, whether this would allow housing on top of the commercial.
Yeah.
And I was thinking along because before we all got here, David and I were having a conversation. One of the things they have in there, commercial district standards for duplex, triplex, fourplex, and multiplex. Minimum front setback in the Dev 1 zone, Development 1 zone. Amity Road, 75 feet. Other road, that would be Bradley, 75 feet. So if you utilize the measuring tool on the GIS and you check where that building is that has saloon and all those things, they're
Bradley
not
Road.
75 feet.
No, they're not.
So they would have to be considered pre-existing legal non-conforming? I don't know. Because they had, their housing is not allowed down there.
Also get into building codes.
Yeah.
The building codes are pretty clear on mixed use, that they're gonna protect the residential. And I think for him to adjust those buildings that he has into residential on the second floor would be a very complicated thing to do. I don't think it.
From a perspective
just-
of getting it done,
Just from a standpoint of practicality.
practicality.
Why is that?
Because the codes look after public health, safety, and welfare, the building codes. And they will separate the uses in ways that the uses don't need to be separated now because they're all business. So it just will become a potentially a complicated undertaking that would probably squelch the whole thing.
You're talking about like second exit and things of that,
Well,
fire rate.
they'll have multiple exits. It won't be that so much as just if they're required to have a fire separation between the two uses, which I think you find they would need to have, that may not be, it may be more demanding than what's between the first floor and the second floor currently. So it's not necessarily just a matter of going up there and changing the wall structures. It's more complicated than that. Seems like a great idea, but it's not necessarily so simple.
Yeah, the only involvement I've had with it on this is on a much smaller scale, where there was a gym. It was supposed to be upstairs, and they put 3 apartments after a while. But,
How'd they separate them?
huh?
How'd they
I don't know.
separate
I'm not. I don't do the building code, stuff. Whatever it was, eventually it got approved, and they were able to have 3 apartments up there. And it
Well,
was
scale
relatively
scale
new.
has a lot to do with it too.
Huh?
Scale has a lot to do with it
Yeah.
too. And it would also be impacted by whether those buildings currently are sprinklered or not. If you sprinkler the building, you get some greater latitude.
Okay. Well, those are the
Well-
things they need to.
We as a housing commission should definitely attend this meeting and testify if we have any questions or
Yeah.
wish to encourage them or anything like that. I mean, if we fail to we continue to fail to be part of this discussion at an earlier point, we're really missing what we're supposed to be communicating with different commissions and giving them the benefit of our opinions. And TPC is the obvious first choice for us to be working very closely with them. If we fail to come and even comment upon this, I think that would be a very serious problem.
When is the
Now,
meeting?
Yeah.
Meeting is
June
Monday
1st,
night at
6:30.
the first at 6:30, is it? It's Monday, Tuesday, I mean, I was
First,
gonna either
21st.
attend, if something came up that I couldn't attend, I was gonna submit written, based on my
Yeah.
review of this.
Chris
Because-
urged us to at least write
Yeah.
something.
I mean, one of the things, in fact, I don't know if you saw it, when I sent it out, one of the things is, that I'm scratching my head at is building design examples. First of all, zoning doesn't normally allow architectural
Review
control.
boards, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and, really, and this is really for us to take a look at, when we're talking about inventory, and we're talking about what David brought up, which is, we need to focus on where we can do things. So now we have a regulation, a statute, that says by the 1st of July, regulations have to be passed to allow 2 to 9 units, middle housing or otherwise. There's
Like-
really only one location where you can put it in Woodbridge. We only have one commercial
Which
district.
is that?
Huh?
You're saying one district?
We only
Yeah.
have one, we have a bunch of, we have 3 or 4 commercial districts.
Right.
But they're all located in one general area.
Yeah.
But,
That's it. And we have plenty of existing buildings there. We have some open land. The parcel that was identified by the committee that is behind the behind the industrial piece at the end of Old Amity Road, at the end of Old Amity Road. It was a
It's only accessible from Bradley Road, though.
Yeah, but it's only accessible from, yeah, right. But,
Through an existing business.
yeah. These are, but I,
can I point out that these are amendments to the opportunity housing section? I don't know how the whole thing is organized, but it's not confined to the commercial district.
well, no, when you look at, okay, when you go to, they have commercial district standards for duplex, triplex, fourplex, and multiplex. This is,
But it's residential.
I don't wanna demean them, they did a lot of work on this. It's a little bit like killing an ant with an elephant gun, okay? But you look at that, they have that. Then they have commercial district standards for cottage clusters.
Yeah.
So,
So the question I have is this. Where would you put a cottage cluster in our commercial district, thinking about what's down there? And what land is available? And there was a lot of land available at one point.
That's
but-
the problem, what land is available?
Right, well,
Yeah,
there
so
wasn't,
this
there
is all
was a good parcel of
theoretical,
land
this is all
available
sort of a-
for some things, but now it has $800,000 condos on it.
Yeah.
Age restricted. But I'm thinking, we're not gonna give up the ball field. I don't know, and that's in what, I think Dev 2, I'm not sure. And you have all those industrial buildings that are there, not gonna,
what,
I don't see any empty lands down there. Yeah, you know what I'm saying, so now, you look at the districts, it's BI, GB, GBA, Dev 1, and Dev 2.
well,
And then they have the standard, the bulk standards under it. But they have a commercial district for cottage clusters, commercial district standards for
Right,
existing
right.
commercial and residential building conversions. That's the one I was looking at.
okay.
Because that's the
So-
one I was not focusing on the new building because I couldn't come up with, unless you get a large excavator, Volvo excavator, and start taking down buildings very quickly. I just couldn't imagine creating a large parcel down
There aren't any.
Yeah, I didn't think there were any.
So what, this commission really wants to look at this from a particular lens. And as you're saying, it's got a very wide lens. So they're trying to do a number of things.
There is one empty piece that is behind the dealership, between the dealership and where Starbucks is, there's an empty lot.
Yeah,
there.
there's a lot
Oh.
of,
It's a good-sized lot.
And there's also a parcel behind the professional buildings off of Bradley Road.
That's the parcel that Quebec's
That's
talking
the
about?
one we're talking about.
Yeah,
Potentially a
it
residential
borders on
building.
old
Yeah.
Amity Road, but it accesses through the professional buildings.
It's
You go
down-
by,
it's down-
you go
it's
by
down the
Amity
hill
Physical
behind there.
Therapy,
Yeah,
and you
exactly.
access it that way.
Is
We
that-
identify
Is
that.
that part of Luciani Farm?
No, it's, I think it's still in the Shavers' control.
Oh, that's right, that's right.
So
But I
to-
mean, my point is, they have taken a lot of time, they've done it well. The other stuff, the chances, in my observation, the chances of building a cottage cluster or, in our commercial district zones seems to be somewhat remotely. There might be one here, one there. However, when you get to number 4, commercial district standards for existing commercial and residential buildings, my point, and this is the point I think the commission, we need to look at, my point is, do these, we have existing buildings, and make a good point, Ben. Putting housing on top of something isn't something you just snap your fingers and do. But I noticed again, I took a ride by it, there is a second floor on that, whatever you want to call it, professional building, the first one you hit on the right as you're coming down the hill. There's a professional building there.
There are two of them that are identical.
Yeah, right, they're two,
Yeah.
right, they're identical. So my point was thinking, okay, fine, when you're looking at these standards, how do these standards impact the existing buildings?
Same issue there, and those are wood construction, so it
Yeah.
gets a little more complicated because it's harder to protect wood.
So what you're looking for is some specific directions to encourage second floor conversions.
Yeah,
That's what you're
if,
looking
it
for.
may, like that's it may cost money, but if they want to do it, if they want to spend the money to put housing on top,
Well,
in an area where they have infrastructure, in an area where we have public transportation, and allows us to go to Connecticut Transit and say to Connecticut Transit, fine, you need to run 3 more buses into downtown and loop them around downtown Woodbridge.
There is that Wheeler's building that's been empty for a long time, just a big box.
Oh, yes, where the restaurant was.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
so it sounds like we should be working with economic
Now-
development because we've got a lot of good ideas for them.
Thinking about open land, a parking lot is open land.
Uh-huh.
Now, if you build a building above that parking lot and leave parking underneath it, then you've created buildable land.
You've created what?
You've created buildable
Yeah,
land.
and they're doing that all over the country.
Yeah, I mean, they're
now.
doing it up in Derby, they put, I don't know how many apartments they put there, but they put a six-story
Oh,
apartment building.
both of the new apartment buildings in Derby,
They have
Trolley
parking
Square
under.
and everything,
Right.
both have parking under.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yale has,
No, a lot of them, where parking under is a lot, it's not cheap, but it's a lot less expensive than a parking garage when you have to go down,
right.
you
I
know?
mean, that's what Yale did over
Right.
the connector. And they put up the Air Rights Garage, they put up those other buildings over that land.
Right.
So they built up. They used the airspace and they
Well,
built up.
yeah, the possibilities do exist, but a lot of times it's gonna involve getting rid of something, is the
Yeah.
nicest way to put it. So, for example, if Katz's is never gonna fail, okay? Katz's Deli or anything like that. But if that site became more empty, you know what I mean?
Right.
If that site became more empty, you could see somebody in that location putting an apartment, going up, going above the thing, first floor under. I mean, the one I'm doing now in Shelton is half and half. You have first floor under, and then you have surface parking out, and it's a 36-unit condo project on a relatively small parcel. You could actually, and again, it wouldn't qualify in here because we're talking 2 to 9 units. And this is something that if you read the Tim Hollister thing, 3-part thing that I sent to you, one of the things Tim said about this statute is this section doesn't create the economics. So that what you're doing, doesn't create the economics in every situation. But, and I guess that would be a great example, where that Grimaldi's is empty, you know what I mean?
Who owns that land?
Huh?
Who
What?
owns that whole
I don't know.
land where Katz is and?
Oh, that's,
Do we know?
But when you talk about something being economically feasible, you're talking about private money making it economically feasible. There are other funding sources that could
Well,
make
no,
it
you're talking- but-
economically feasible. I mean, if your
Yeah.
goal is to get housing, and your goal is to get affordable housing, it's like that Curtis Cofield place. That was done with, a number of different funding sources.
Yeah.
Right. Well, we'll get
to that.
Yeah, we'll get to
We'll
that
get to
there,
that later.
but I mean, looking at that site, the potential exists.
You say that site.
The Katz's,
Okay,
Starbucks,
okay, yep.
and
the abutting
Vivaldi's.
empty lot,
yeah, and the
which is
abutting
huge.
empty lot. I can see, given that location, we're talking 12 to 9, okay? But I can see someone coming down there potentially and putting in, if the two lots occupy, I don't know, an acre or whatever, or a couple acres, I can see them putting in anywhere between 50 and 100, depending on the size of it, 50 and 100 units going up 6-4, doing the
Might
first
be
floor
able to
parking.
double that.
Huh?
Might be able to double that back there.
Yeah, I mean, again, that's about
But
whether
see-
they're willing to do it. The developer or the property owner is getting their funding, whatever you want to call it, from density.
But if you put a huge building there, I doubt you get any pushback from the town, as opposed to putting it on Beecher Road, where you
Right.
get tremendous pushback from the town.
Oh,
Because-
no,
Yeah,
no, there's no doubt about that.
Because it would work down there, like it would work, on those buildings on Amity Road.
But in that situation, you have to rely on the private owner. It's not something we own. The question is, did somebody attempted to go down and do that? But other than that parcel,
Well,
and
there's a-
other than the
there-
parcel in the back, there isn't much in the
there's
downtown where you can
another
build from
par-
scratch.
There's another parcel that the lawyer owns on Lucy Street, which is across from him is a parking lot.
It's empty.
The parking,
It's just an open parking
it's an
area.
open parking area, right, it's an open parking area. I mean,
On Lucy Street?
Yeah, and you could get half a dozen units on
Yeah,
that site,
you could put-
particularly if you went up in the air.
Right,
Yeah.
you could. I mean, those are the kinds of places that you have to look at, as
Well,
opposed to
see,
taking,
what I'm,
just looking at
Yeah.
virgin land.
okay, but what I'm talking about there then, okay.
So actually, there's two questions. One of them is is this allowing what we want to have done to be done? And the second is, who can promote it? And the answer to the second question is the Economic Development Commission. So
Okay.
we have a bunch of people we should
I
be
don't think
talking
we're gonna
to.
know, Mary, if it's something we'd like until somebody makes a proposal. And at that point, it may be
No, I
too
mean,
late.
just in general, to promote more housing.
I forgot to bring my.
That's our
I
charge.
forgot to bring my, my computer. Can somebody tell me, if somebody's on the computer, on the GIS, click on the thing that says zoning, and tell me what is the zone along Lucy Street, the piece on Lucy Street? Because the zones there's all different zones there. There's a residential zone to protect the residences, and then there's B1, I think down there's GB, and there's Dev 1 and Dev 2.
Do you know
Depends on which side of the
Huh?
street
Oh.
you're on.
area?
Good. So where's Lucy Street? What color is it?
Right, well, this is Lucy, right here,
And what's the zone on Lucy Street?
all purple, B1 on both sides.
B1? Okay. So B1, okay. That's do it. B1, the setback, the road setback in B1 is only 10 feet.
Right.
Yeah, so that is doable. You go down that, that's what I'm saying to you. But, building width, minimum 30 feet, maximum 60 feet, one driveway per lot, maximum lot coverage 85%. So it looks like in the B1 district, you
There's
can do
potential
exactly, there's a potential exists that you can do what you're pointing out. We're not,
I don't see.
segue this to what we were talking about before, and we'll tell you that is the kind of inventory we need to develop to say, okay, fine, for this type of zoning, for this type of multifamily housing in the commercial zone, there are pieces that exist and identify them.
Is that something we should be doing, or is that something
That's what
planning
I
and
was
zoning
just
should
gonna
be
ask.
doing?
It is.
Because they're the ones who define
Okay,
the
no,
zones.
part of it, when you look at this, part of it is for us to identify parcels. Now, the problem is, and identify them and say privately owned. You know what I mean? So we can identify where they're, like, I wasn't aware, honestly, until you brought it up about the parcel behind the car dealer and behind Katz's.
It's huge.
Yeah. I wasn't aware of
Behind
that.
the brewery, it's bordered by the brewery, and on the other side by the failed restaurant, which is probably never coming back. Till they build housing next door, and then it'll come back.
And what you pointed out about Wheelers. Yes, Wheelers, you know, that was a building that nothing has ever happened to it. You could easily go in there.
But the other one's old Subaru dealership, which is now, I don't know, I think McGill's is using it now for their crashed cars, but it's just a thin metal building. That'd come down a heartbeat.
I have a question, though. Many commissions have raised this issue. Is there one commission that is charged with actually going to these different places and asking who owns the land? Is there?
Oh, you don't have to ask.
It's all.
You don't have to ask, you just go online, you can find out.
So,
Yeah,
so
and
I mean,
consider
it's
your
talked
earlier
at, it's been
question.
talked at about for months and months by many different committees and commissions, but has anybody actually done that? Who should be doing it? Should it be us?
Well,
Should it be
the
economic
housing-
development?
The housing committee did it in a fashion and came up with 10 parcels that we identified.
Mhm.
And they included 1, 2, how many in downtown? 3, I think, you know.
In the housing
parcel
plan?
we took- huh?
I mean,
In
our
the housing
first,
plan?
In the housing plan, we identified, I think, 8 or 10 parcels. And I'm trying to think of the ones that were in the downtown area that we developed. Our job is to take a look at these parcels. I mean, certainly you can identify, the harder thing for us to do would be to say, you know what, the Wheelers restaurant site would be a great thing. Because there's one thing, what do you have to do there? You've got to take the building down.
Demolish it.
You're not converting the building.
No.
I think you've got to go a step further. You identify the property, contact the owner, see if they would be amenable to doing something with that property. If you have a piece of land, you have a building on it, you're paying taxes on that, you're not getting any revenue, there'll be an incentive to do
Right.
something. with
That's
it.
not us. Now
Identifying
that-
the owners.
Yeah,
is a matter
that's
of-
not us who that, we can identify, and this is why boards work together.
What?
We identify it, we talk to economic development, and the economic development people contact the owner and say, you know, this would be, you know, what are your interests, and or the economic development people go out and say to a developer, hey, you know what, we're gonna try to marry you, mate you with this property owner, because I think if you wanna do it, look what you can do under our zoning. And that's the way they would approach it. Keep in mind that this regulation is only 2 to 9. And in reality, that's fine, but that's what the statute said we had to do. And it might, I underline might, as we go through this, we may be saying to the Planning and Zoning Commission, you need to take this and not limit it to 9 units. You know what I mean? You need to look at it in the commercial district and open it up. Because then, and this is the problem with knocking on the door, David, right now, you knock on the door, there isn't much they can do under zoning. So zoning's gotta work first, and then you can say, look at, on this piece of property, and zoning needs to talk to someone, like architectural planning and everything, okay, what can you do on this size piece of property in the downtown area, for lack of a better word, in the downtown area?
In the village district.
On a this size of a lot, we know we have sewer, water, what can you do for parking? Because you're going to be, you got 2 decisions on parking. Remember, 2 to 9, no parking rules apply. There's no parking required under the statute. 16 and under.
What do you
but
do
that's
I was
with
about
what
to
do you
say-
do with them?
That's pretty
Well,
impressive.
Yeah.
I was about to say a while ago that identifying the owner shouldn't take us more than 20 seconds. It's all
Right.
on the net. I mean, I looked up where Grimaldi's was, and it's Litchfield Realty Trust.
There you go.
Do I know who they are? No, but we could easily find that out too.
Right. And the economic development people go to them and say, are you people interested? I have a developer who's willing to talk to you, buy your land, work with you to develop apartments in this area that is right off of exit number
46.
46 now.
Whatever.
Well, no, that's the
Once
secret.
upon a
We're all
time,
going to be
59.
tested on
Still 59.
what were the old exit numbers, what were the new exit
Yeah.
numbers now. But that, you're right. But I don't think it's our job to contact them. I think
But
it's
for all we know,
economic
economic
development.
No,
development is already doing that.
Yeah.
As long as we have somebody going out and taking that
Right.
next step
Right.
to
Yes.
find out if it's possible.
Yeah, and there, it can happen in the downtown. One of the complaints you're gonna get, people I've had conversations with, is the traffic is horrible. Well, that's the truth. And you can probably alleviate it by a lot. But one of the things they're learning with the apartments, especially if you're talking 1 and 2 bedrooms and you get a lot of young people, they're finding out that, you mentioned the Derby one, Trolley Square. Trolley Square has approximately 10% of its occupants with no cars.
Nope.
They are young people. Now, granted,
Interesting.
you can literally trip over your door sill and land in the Derby train station, which has buses to New Haven, buses to Bridgeport, buses to Shelton, buses to Norwalk, everywhere. You can do that, but what my clients are saying to me afterwards is, what's happening is the young people are coming in, they are not buying cars, they are Ubering all around,
Exactly.
and then they go to Enterprise when they need to take a trip.
Yep.
And they avoid, and they buy their car insurance. So there is a change. I think it's something we need, and Mary's right. We need to go to the meeting, we need to read this. And what you don't understand, if you don't understand anything you're reading, feel free to pick up the phone and call me, and say, well, what does this mean? Because I live with these standards. This is what I stare at most of the day, when I'm doing a project. And I look at setbacks. I look at rear yard setbacks. I look at impervious coverage, building coverage. One of the things that fools most commissions is floor area ratio. They have
Yeah.
no idea
Yeah.
what it is.
Yeah.
And floor area ratio is the higher you go up, the more square feet you put,
Right.
you're increasing your floor area ratio. It is one of the most foolish bulk standards that they put on there. People don't understand.
So
But
was this drafted May 8th? The date at the top of it, you think,
Well, this is P&Z did it. What does it say?
it's on the top, it says May 8th.
5/8 draft for referral. Yeah,
Yeah.
it went out, and Mary confirmed that this is the correct one.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mary
okay.
confirmed that this is the correct
Okay.
one. So
They really
it-
did a lot of work, yep.
they did a lot of work on it and everything like that, but I think there's just some more work they have to do. All right, moving along. Housing trust funds. I don't know if you printed out what I sent out to you, Guilford and Stamford. I also sent out to you my friend Claude AI.
Yeah.
I did a little work with Dan on how you fund the trust funds, or how Stanford funds the trust funds. That I passed it out. Did anybody? Did you? I passed it.
I did.
Why don't you pass it down to Elaine and Lou? Okay. So.
Oh,
Yeah, so you have 3 things. You have the Affordable Housing Trust Fund of Guilford, the Declaration of Trust for Affordable Housing Trust Fund. The reason I put this on is I think it's one of those things, and the other thing that I think I sent out, or did I forget to send it out or print it out, was the, here you go. The article from Wilton, P&Z considered Housing Authority Trust Fund to address affordable housing in Wilton. And this was an article that I think, what, Kathy picked up, Mary, or somebody?
I've got some information coming from Wilton that will address the New Canaan Trust Fund specifically.
Okay,
But I was gone last week, so I
okay.
didn't connect with them to get it, but I should have it for the next
Alright.
meeting.
So everybody is looking at it. What my concern was this, I've never dealt with them, so I don't know. My concern is this, how are they funded? And that was my concern, and is it something we can reasonably set up here? The Affordable Housing Trust Fund in Guilford doesn't really explain it. It says, in addition to such sums as may be directly appropriated by the town for deposit into said fund, if any, the town is authorized to and shall deposit all other monies received and accepted for purposes of affordable housing for whatever sources such monies are received. These sources may include building department fees, fee in lieu of payments, as described in the zoning code, monetary gifts, grants, loans, and monies received from state and federal authorities. That's their thing.
So they're tagging people who want to build anything else in the town for a fee to help support the trust.
Right, and
Yeah, and along with other things, but
Right.
that's part of it.
Has it been
Stanford,
successful in most places that use the trust fund?
well,
There are only so many places that have really tried this. New Canaan's one of them, and apparently they have a very good working model.
Uh-huh.
yeah, the question is where are you gonna get the money from? For example, somewhere in
Yeah.
here, in the Stanford one,
Yeah.
it talks about the fact, first of all, they have an ordinance, I did not look at the ordinance.
A
It's talked about the fact that
yeah.
what they do is they take money from zoning applications. So some developer comes in with a big application, and part of what
Right.
he's assessed is money that goes into
The trust.
the trust fund. And they're able to build it up. Now Stanford's on a whole different level than we are with the number of applications that they got. And then they want it. And then the use of it, then you look at, okay, well, what do they use it for? And they use it for the creation of affordable rental or home ownership housing units, multifamily rehabilitation program, home ownership assistance, limited equity cooperative or condominium conversion, studies to determine affordable housing needs, foreclosure or eviction prevention, rental or landlord assistance programs. Those are the things in Stanford. And,
We're pretty small in comparison.
yeah, Guilford,
I can
which
see,
is
I
probably
can see our
closer to us.
$500 trust fund.
Yeah, right. Guilford, which is what I was able to print out, which wasn't very much. Expenditures from the fund, the Board of Trustees, the Board of Selectmen are the trustees. So they have it completely different. Said expenditures shall be made exclusively for the costs associated with the investigation, appraisal, acquisition, constructing, rehabilitation, repairing, administration, fees, and maintenance costs relating to parcels of land, both improved or unimproved, or development rights, easements, deeds, restrictions, options, interests, or other rights, the use of which shall be limited to retention and designated parcels for their long-term use in providing affordable housing within the meaning of 8-30G. So what they're saying is, we're gonna use this fund to maybe develop our own affordable
Right.
projects.
And in a large enough community, it's viable. In this community, good luck.
I don't know how we fund it.
Is there an example
How
here
big
from a
is Guilford?
comparable community?
How many,
They're
what's the
big, they're
population?
probably 3 times what we have here, but still, that's not big.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, Wilton and New Canaan, you gotta remember both of them, at least if you go down to Wilton, you drive along Route 7,
They've
There's
got
apartments
business and
after-
commercial. Yeah, they've got a lot
a
of
lot of it,
going on. Yep.
apartments, commercial, everything, shopping centers,
A lot of new residential buildings too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
brand new ones. But what you're doing is the trust fund is used for a variety of purposes, but it's not used for development per se. It's used to assist to do more
In-
affordable
In
housing.
this town, we'd be probably restricted to exploration of
Right.
opportunities.
I just don't want, and I know we had I had not, did it, and, oh, I'm sorry, the thing I passed out to you, that's interesting. And it's pointed out in this file back. City of Hanford Affordable Housing Trust Fund. Where does the money come from? Commercial linkage fees, 10% of development permit fees, and you can read down through that. We don't do enough development to fund such a thing.
Precisely
Yeah,
what
but
he's
with-
saying.
10% of the commercial development permit fees, that wouldn't apply to Woodbridge.
Well, especially if we're
not
trying to,
appreciably. I mean, there's some commercial development, but not a lot.
if you're trying to make an affordable housing development work, one of the things you do just to make the whole project less expensive for a developer is to forego some of the fees that they would otherwise have to pay, right? That's one of the ways that the town supports the development of a project that otherwise would not be financially feasible. So if we're giving them a discount on the fees, we can't turn around and tell them to give us 10% of those fees.
Right.
It doesn't work.
But those, I mean, you're not gonna give.
Sorry, that took a long
You're
time
not
for
gonna
me
give a
to explain.
discount.
But
Yeah.
but what about organizations like LISC and Habitat for Humanity who are involved in just this thing?
No, they're not really involved.
Not in the trust
Not
fund,
in a
but other
trust fund.
sources of funding for developers.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And that, they're, when we had the meeting with them and talked to them, that sort of segues a bit into Cofield and other 100 affordable projects, because they get involved in those, and they help with the tax credits, and they help with that other stuff. That's a different source of funding. It's not, the trust funds appear to be used locally when you have the ability, okay, we're gonna do another senior housing project and make it affordable or something like that, and the trust fund is gonna help us.
Yeah, but the trust fund's not gonna have the amount of money that's
No,
gonna make a significant.
Not at all, not in Woodbridge. I mean, with all,
Contribution
I know
to that.
people are bringing it up as an alternative. I don't see it, and I'm willing to listen to people. I don't see it as an alternative
No,
in
no,
Woodbridge.
No.
Not at
Well,
all.
AI is here to tell you that it is possible. So just
Well, anything's
type it
possible.
in
Well-
there.
I mean, yeah, I mean,
It'll give you the whole 9 yards.
you could fund it with an extremely large project, with an extremely large development fee out of that project, to
For a
a,
project that had potential for profit, yeah.
yeah, a for-profit
So,
project.
so can you think of one?
I can, but I'm not gonna go there. All
I
right.
can think of one
Yeah.
where the town gave away probably the most viable piece of commercial property that it had available.
You talking about
And we-
Miami? Are you talking about Miami?
I'm talking about
And the
here.
Trump Library? Oh,
This, and we, what did we do? We made age-restricted housing that cost $600,000-800,000.
Oh,
Oh, yeah.
And what did we gain? We gained 3 good-sized drainage ditches right on Bradley Road.
right, that aren't even stocked with trout.
No, not even close. They're not even
Oh,
planted.
dear. It's not funny.
I know, they are, the drainage
They're
ditches.
fenced though, aren't they?
Well, they have to be.
I know.
And it's good. But, right, when you look at housing, and you look at the ability to develop a mixed-use project that had housing and everything else in it, in the downtown, when they said they were gonna go, and full disclosure, I've done some work for Toll Brothers, but I'm thinking to myself, whoa, taking away that piece, and it was so funny, because my son, the one from LA, we were driving by, and he goes, oh, when he came out to visit, he said, oh, they're building, I said, yeah, how much are they going for? I said, 700,000-800,000, and they're selling like hotcakes.
Yeah.
So does the Cofield, I read it a while
Yeah.
ago, but they relied on, it's all affordable, correct? The
100%.
Cofield?
Well,
It's
that's
100?
what the other thing I sent out to you,
Right.
So they
on-
relied on all different kinds of grants. I mean, the funding was
Well-
fascinating and complex. but can we?
Yeah.
It
Can
was
we-
also in an urban area,
Yeah.
which
True.
has significant, it's good juju to do that.
I mean, it's a
in,
piece of land that was begging really for development, right? That Route 34.
It was, yeah, there was the old Route 34 was coming
The
through
old
until,
Legion in your neighborhood.
huh?
Did
But,
that development company have to pay for that land, or was it donated by the city? I didn't find any information. Do you know?
Well, this is the thing I sent out to everybody.
Yeah, but it wasn't, I didn't see it in there.
It was,
Yeah, I
it
didn't
was
see it,
eminent domain.
Eminent domain.
How's it owned?
What's that?
How is it owned?
Oh. it's-
It is owned by okay, so I've done some research on it, and, I hope I didn't, I've done some
Since it was
research on
eminent
both
domain.
it and,
Eminent domain.
okay.
Eminent domain, Tom.
Huh?
What you sent us said eminent
The
domain.
domain, okay, right. But what I'm saying to you is, I sent you this full disclosure, AI. You ask the questions, and then you have to double check the answers. Yeah. Do 100% affordable housing projects pay real estate taxes? And the reason I ask this is
Depends.
because, huh?
It depends.
It depends.
on the
That's
source of
exactly
funding.
the
On the
answer.
source of funding.
Not necessarily just on the source of funding, it depends on the ownership. If the nonprofit that develops it continues to own it, no.
Then it's not
If
taxed.
if it is
Right.
funded with tax credits and everything else and whatever, and it's a private developer coming in to build it, then yes, it pays taxes, but those taxes, based on the restrictions, are reduced. So for example, the thing that I deal with the most is somebody gets a tax bill, and they get a ginormous boost in their assessment because they have this large piece of land that is potentially to the assessor zonable, and I then inform them, no, we put a conservation easement on it. Oh, I'm sorry. So it's a conservation easement. Then all of a sudden the tax assessment goes down. So it in this situation when it's all 100% affordable, that impacts your value. There can be, as it says in this thing, pilot agreements, which are a partial substitute.
But who owns it?
The one on Cofield is
Yeah.
a for-profit. They pay,
For-profit
but I haven't
owns it.
seen the amount of taxes. They were funded by other things, so it's a Cofield, from what I understand, is a for-profit that will be paying taxes. It will be at a reduced rate. And they talk about for-profit LIHTC partnerships, taxed but at a reduced value. More low-income housing tax credit projects. That's what they're called. Okay, but they're by for-profit people. The impact on municipalities has to do with the fact that most of these 100% ones are 3-bedroom. So you now are bringing more. If you're concerned about children, you're bringing more children in these 100% units. But they can be built. Again, you need to find a piece of land for it to be built. And you mentioned urban and stuff like that, they are, you want them near public transportation.
Right.
You want to find out where the public transportation is. And so they're doable. Again, we need to analyze whether or not it's something that we should be focusing on putting them into Woodbridge. And if we did, where would we put them?
There's only one good place. That's the commercial zone. Down the flats, that's it.
Right.
We don't have water and sewer and transportation.
Well, you
But
don't
much
have to
else.
have,
We have
you
a
don't have to have
country club.
transportation.
But except if you're gonna do,
Very
if you're gonna do
close.
housing like that,
That's not gonna.
the housing that we looked at in New Haven, you need transportation.
Well, it just depends on what affordability quotient, category you're targeting. If it's 80%
Oh, no. Well,
AMI,
these aren't.
then you don't need transportation. It's probably 60% you don't need transportation.
Right. These kind of Cofield and others talking are usually 30 to,
Yeah, right, well,
30
we're
to
not
100%.
talking
I
about
mean,
that
they're in
for
the low end.
Woodbridge.
They're in the low end.
We've never talked about that for Woodbridge, 30%.
Well, David had asked about Cofield, and
Yeah.
that's what Cofield is. Cofield's
But it's
30 to,
inapplicable,
Okay.
30 to what percent, Dominic? I didn't-
30%
I think
AMO.
30 to 80%, 30, yeah,
Yeah.
30 to
Makes a big
80%.
difference.
But they're usually, again, the question is, let's take our.
So this is an inappropriate prototype,
Huh? Right.
right?
It's not an.
No, I'm saying it is an inappropriate
Yes.
prototype to be
Yes.
discussing.
Yes.
So let's not go there.
Yeah, I agree, because if you were talking downtown, if you were talking the piece that we just talked about behind the car dealers and behind
Oh, no, it's
the
it's
shopping
too,
center.
the density's too low for that.
But what I mean is, why would you take that? Why would you reduce its economic impact, economic development impact, and you'd be doing that because it would be substantially lower than market rate 1 and 2 bedroom units, substantially lower. And so again, I think that's.
We can meet our affordability goals without doing that.
Sorry. can't
We
hear
can
you.
meet our general goals, including our affordability goals, without doing that. So why would we take it on?
Well, again, right, I don't think it's
It's
worth
just-
spending our
it's the wrong
time
model to
looking
look
at
at.
the
Yeah.
100% affordable units,
Yeah.
the larger projects. I think we can have a conversation with Lish, and what kind of help that they
Yeah,
can
there are
provide for
there are
us.
other models that might be 100% affordable
Right.
that,
Right, but we don't have, in my opinion, the land to do something like that in the immediate downtown area. There isn't a lot down there.
okay.
And I don't think somebody's gonna suggest that we do it on the golf course. Whereas the only other place where you have,
Why wouldn't they suggest we do it on
Huh?
the golf course? Why would they not suggest that?
That's gonna be a very hard sell.
I didn't say it was going to be a hard
No,
sell. I
no,
just
hard
want to
sell.
know, why wouldn't they
But-
suggest it? What makes it a no?
You can suggest it, but practically speaking, you're gonna have to sell that land. You're gonna need a referendum, at least the town hall, and then a referendum to sell that land. And it's probably not gonna happen, because there's so much pushback for you.
Well, there certainly has been in the past. I'm not sure it's quite as bad as
Same
it was
people
before.
Well, I mean,
But no, my
regardless of
question
that-
was just
And
why
then
wouldn't we
people- and the new
propose
if
it?
you
people
wouldn't,
coming in
if
don't
you're
want
not
it.
If
gonna
we
sell
fa-
it,
if we
if
fail
you-
to propose it, it will never
You
happen.
can propose it.
If we
I'm
can-
just
if
saying,
we can
don't spend too much
sell it.
energy on it, because it will be futile.
Yeah, I think that's futile.
Yeah.
I
Currently, I
don't.
would say you're right,
Wow.
I don't
but
agree.
I don't know
Futile.
about 5 years from now, after we look at a few more 27 feature roads.
I
It may
think
not be.
a lot of people are looking at things a bit differently now that we've had an 8-30G application. I think, people are realizing
Okay.
that we have to be quite innovative. There has been a
So-
beautiful plan for the golf course
So,
that includes mostly open space.
So how big is your poll numbers for that statement?
I don't know,
Yeah,
but I
so-
think, as Mary said, we don't know until we
But-
try.
getting back to the one, if we were going to, let's put the big if.
Yeah.
If we're gonna put something out there, you're gonna put something that's gonna generate economic development.
Right, right.
You're not gonna
You're
put
not
something
gonna
that's
build-
not gonna generate
Right.
economic development. And that is the salient point. That's my point with respect to we'll have, believe me, we will have an agenda item on this, and we will have a serious discussion on the golf course, because you need to. We cannot avoid it. It's the 800-pound gorilla in the room. So we are gonna have a discussion with it, because it is substantially the subject of what is going on in the depositions and the litigation in the open housing. So it is, believe me, talked about a lot more than we've talked about it
Oh,
in,
true.
in there. And, but anyway, so I think that those items, that's good that we can realize that, number one, the trust fund isn't gonna work in Woodbridge. Number two, 100% housing, 100% affordable housing projects like Cofield, we really don't have the land to do it on. And-
Or the need to do it.
Or the need to do it,
We need
yeah.
something that's gonna have greater appeal and do more to avoid the other issues that would come with the lower end of the housing.
I would agree with you.
Absolutely. May I just interject a question? We've been talking about the affordable housing plan.
And the locational map that we created and that was in that affordable housing plan. So I was just looking to see it. I wonder if you would like to have it distributed. And I discovered that they took the affordable housing plan off of our website page on the town.
Well,
Who is they, Mary?
Whoever runs the webpage.
it doesn't
okay.
make any difference. It's in my
It's,
computer.
it's here.
So, yeah, I will be
Well,
able to generate it.
I can do it. I mean, I found it, obviously.
Yeah, right.
If
Yeah.
you need it, I will send it out
Well,
again.
if you have it up, since we're talking
But we
about
really
that,
should have that
what are
document
the
available.
parcels? What are the parcels that we identified?
Yep, we're on preliminary guidelines.
Because there was one on Hazel Terrace. I know there was.
There was, what did I do? Oh, I let it go because.
One lot, maybe?
we wanted
Yeah.
I mean, there's one little lot back on the tail end that's kind of a pie shape.
We were talking about the fact that there's a whole bunch, as David pointed out, topographically challenged lots owned by the town of Woodbridge that are at the end of Hazel and at the end of Park and whatever that little loopy thing is that comes off the park. And it looked like the town bought a lot of property. I mean, you could talk about for open space, and I suppose it is just open space. But at the end of Hazel, they were divided into lots. And now they may be, topographically where you can, but it's important to point out that they're town-owned property.
Okay, ready?
Yeah.
First Church of Christ, Fitzgerald property, JCC parking lot, Old Amity Road. You know where that is?
Old Amity Road?
That's
That's the
the
one we
piece
talked
that's down low by the old fields.
Okay.
Bradley Road, I'm not sure what that means, except for the.
We just gave it
Well, we
away.
gave that away.
I thought we gave it away before this thing was written. No, maybe there's something else. Merritt Avenue,
Oh,
gone.
The one.
Hazel
Well, actually,
Terrace.
there's still a lot of land undeveloped on that property.
Is there really? Up close underneath the.
Well, I think they have it, I think they got either 12 or 14 duplex units approved, and they've only built 2 or 4 of them. And I don't know why they haven't built the rest of them.
I heard they ran into money trouble.
I would guess it would have to be money trouble.
That's what I heard.
And, that might be a parcel to think about acquiring. Yeah.
We were-
I understand there might be a tax issue as well, and if that's the
Okay,
case,
so-
then maybe it's worth
Okay,
discussing.
this just says this
Maybe we
parcel
can
of
make
land.
an offer
This
they
must
can't
be that
refuse.
What?
triangle, between Merritt and Route 15.
That's the one that was built.
Right.
I mean,
Small
approved.
The opportunity for an option for owner-occupied housing. Yeah. Hazel Terrace, small side street west of Amity Road at the Flats, already seen some smaller scale multifamily housing activity, but more is possible with some infill parcels and opportunities to reposition older commercial properties for residential. 8, Flats, Selden Street. Flats section of Woodbridge serves as the de facto downtown, blah, blah, blah. Single-use commercial buildings along Amity Road could be repositioned over time in mixed use. Okay,
Yep.
Fountain Street, already developed, our proposals in, right, that's the one west of Route 15, and the Country Club.
Those are the ones we
What
did.
about the,
Now, remember,
Number
those
10.
were identified.
What about the theater lots? The theater lots.
What are the
Um,
The theater lots let's see.
How many were there? Let's see, there were.
They
The
were-
theater, and answer your question, the theater
7?
lots were lots that movies used to give out back
Right,
in the old
yeah,
days.
they were premiums, basically. They
Yeah,
got a very
well,
small
yeah.
piece of land, but you put them all together,
But
I
if you
think they're
put
what,
them
an
together-
acre or 2 acres there?
We did explore that
It's
at
an
one
interior
point.
lot.
Yeah. Well, you can look at the coupon material. I don't know if enough of them are, some of them are still in private hands. So I think some of them you might be able to put together, but I can't remember offhand.
No, well, my recollection is that we bought those We bought out those lots when I was on the board.
I don't think all
I
of
think so.
them.
We
That's
talked
the
about them. I
trouble.
don't think, I think
We'd
you're
have-
probably right.
Have to look at the Coop-Hop.
Because there were only a couple of them that were not owned by the town.
I think we just bought some, didn't we? Didn't we just? or
Where are
did
they
we get-
located?
Were they, there's just been some activity about them, I forget.
Mary, are they off Park Road? Is that where they are?
Those, are you talking about the lots that are in, there's a whole bunch of lots at the end of Hazel. They show them as lots, and they're all
No,
owned by
this
the,
is,
chopped
That's
up.
different. It's
yeah,
on
just
the
chopped
top-
up.
They're on the top of the hill.
But anyway,
Okay.
those parcels that we identified, like the ones around here,
Right.
we identified them because they had infrastructure. That was where are there large parcels that are served by infrastructure that are potential for housing in the future? If you wanted to talk about 100% housing owned by the town, 100% affordable housing,
Right.
you can put it on the Fitzgerald property. Fitzgerald property, everybody was telling me when I was doing the firehouse, it's limited, you can't do anything on the Fitzgerald property. So I pulled out the
Yeah,
Fitzgerald property deeds. It's reserved for public buildings.
Right. If you-
That's what it's reserved for. So you could, if the town wanted its own public affordable housing project, you could put it there.
Affordable housing.
Yeah, but there, you know, so there's, that's kind of thing, and we were identifying property as, just as was talked about, identifying property owned by religious institutions that might generate, that wasn't the case back then, that there was, we know, there was some discussion that they had a large parcel that they could do. So those were parcels that were along the infrastructure. And then we had an infrastructure map, and then we had a bus route map. So wherever the two of them blended together,
Right.
we said, that is number one. But like, for instance, the bus that went down to Seymour, we talked to Connecticut Transit, could easily, at Blue Check, have gone Center, Beecher, and that way there. So they could have done. So and which is something we're going to have to do, looking at infrastructure, things. So that was the identifying those parcels. Were then with the help of Chris Sullivan. She's the one who utilized the stuff, because I know there was a lot of discussion about a piece behind Brookside. Wasn't there a piece behind Brookside farm stand?
No, not in that, not in the,
Oh, that's a B
affordable
zone.
housing.
That's a B
That's
zone
wet
behind
back
there.
there.
Huh?
That's wet back there. They have a
It's-
creek running
it's-
underneath.
it's
Underneath there,
steep.
but I mean up in the back.
It's steep too.
Yeah, it's
there,
steep.
and
Turkey-
there's
Where the
ledge
turkey
in
farm
it.
is.
Huh?
Where the turkey farm is?
see,
Yeah, back up in that area there, but then it doesn't have the infrastructure
Right.
to take it.
See,
All right.
these are the theater lots. See how small they are? They're just little pieces of cloth.
And where are
You
they
have to-
located?
They're at the end of Park Street. I mean, Forest. They are, where North Pease comes out, and you know how it goes like this?
Yeah.
Yep.
Right where, here.
Are they anywhere near Hazel?
No.
No.
No, this
No.
is, this is Park Lane here, Hazel's, they're down
Okay.
here, that's the flats right on there. See how they are? So this is Rimmon going up North Pease, boom, boom, boom. This new road, Jeremy Garden Lane, that's all new houses.
Oh, yeah.
And it's right here. You can see how tiny they are if you've got really good
Yeah,
eyes.
you
Okay.
have to put them together.
You have to put them,
But there's no infrastructure.
No.
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 No, not currently,
No,
no.
that's septic and well.
All right. Well, final thing on the agenda, and we can conclude that, is some suggestions as to who, going forward, we would like to come and talk to us or make presentations to us.
What about?
Upcoming tours, events, and suggestion for speakers.
What about Ian from Scrog?
He's number one on my list whenever they hire somebody to come in and talk to us. I think I honestly think we should have Mike Santoro come in and speak to us about 8-30G points, moratorium, and everything of that nature.
Can I make a suggestion? What
What?
about our own planner? Our own planner has been working with TP&C and has been working with economic development.
Yeah, I was-
And if we can just ask our questions of him, get him to explain what they're trying to do, because believe me, I've tried to understand it on the basis of, the commission meetings that I've been listening to, but it's hard to do. And we have a particular perspective on this that the others don't share. So if we could get them to explain how this fits in to our charge, that would, I think, really help us focus on what we can do to help.
Yes, I agree. The planner, somebody from economic development, it would be
Well,
very
somebody,
helpful.
okay, somebody from economic development, or schedule a joint meeting with economic development.
We have to follow up with them.
I would suggest a joint meeting with economic development.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
That'll be great, yeah.
So, planner, we have Scrog,
We should meet with conservation too to keep that ball rolling.
yeah, they're a little farther down than economic development at this point.
Well, it
for
depends
me.
on what we want to do, because it depends on what we want to do. I can't remember what Mika's told the town meeting we were doing, but I remember thinking we are. So we better find out what we're supposed to be doing so we can start doing
Well,
it.
we talked about the fact that
But
we need to
maybe
have,
doing ADUs
we
is
need to
part
have
of it.
communication between all the
Of course.
towns.
Yeah.
TP&Z, unfortunately, since we were put together, they were busy doing that. They had to do that by June 30th.
Right.
So they were too busy doing that, dealing with other issues. The chairman did take the time to call me at one point. We had a nice little chat, and everything on that. So, we're not going to have. I'm not sure if there is a benefit in this. Looking around this room, of suggesting that we have a joint meeting of TPZ, Housing Committee, Economic Development, and Conservation.
All in one meeting?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that would be a benefit.
Well, we have
Not
to
at
have,
this point.
Who would
we have
talk?
to have a common topic.
We have a deadline, Dominic, to come up.
Well, our deadline is 2029. You're keeping that in mind. Our deadline, there's 2028 towns, we're a 2029 town, okay? For our deadline for the housing thing. So we're gonna talk a lot about that when we get Ian and whoever they hire at Scrag and bring them in to talk about how they're gonna help
We
us.
don't have to come up with something by July 1st of this year.
No,
No.
that's them. This is
Yeah, but-
this.
That's what,
Zoning.
That's
that's what
this.
that's all
But it-
about.
yeah.
Yeah.
But if
Yeah.
you, but
P and Z had to do it.
Got it,
And,
got it.
and the issue was so confined that it really wasn't something for us, because if we would have went to them, we would have said to them, oh, you should focus in the commercial area. Well, that's what the statute says. You need to focus on the commercial area.
But if we don't achieve anything before
Huh?
2029,
Huh?
I said,
You
if
know-
we don't make any progress before
Oh, no,
2029, this
we're
will be
gonna-
very
but
bad.
What I'm saying is, when it's good to pull out that, we're gonna have another one, but it's good to pull out the guidelines that were sent originally, that we got, that were operating, and to read through them. There's other stuff that's gonna be coming down to us to help us out. And that, on top of that, there's stuff gonna be going to the scribe, which is gonna help us out. And I'd like to do the things like meeting with the planner, meeting with SCROG, meeting with economic development, and then, let's say, conservation. I'd like to meet with them before we talk about having a substantial public, once we gather that information, then we can talk about planning it, because why, and I'm just throwing this out, why would we want to have, public involvement, but why wouldn't you want to have a combined board public involvement situation? You know what I mean? And I'm not saying necessarily have all the boards meet, because maybe more people, but if you had representatives from all the boards to intake from the public, and for the public to understand how all the stuff interrelates. People don't relate housing with economic development. in the, I haven't even looked at the grand list in Woodbridge. The grand list in Woodbridge, I will state for the record, is probably 80% residential, is what we're doing. We don't have any,
It is
we don't have a power
80%.
plant, we don't have Bridgeport Avenue, we don't have, we don't have any of that stuff. So
We had a car dealership.
we have a car
There's
dealership.
more business in Woodbridge than you think.
Huh?
There's more business in Woodbridge than you think.
Right.
Because when
But-
you look at the budget and you see the grand list, there are more businesses than you can imagine,
But-
because they're all tucked away.
But they're all
No,
small.
no.
They're all small.
So Dominic, you
small,
meant a
right, but they
representative.
contribute.
No,
You didn't mean the whole board of.
No, yeah,
representatives
to
from-
boards, and I'm just throwing it out, there maybe should be more than just our boards, to be able to address the public. And the other thing is, on all the boards and everything like that, I'm gonna see whether or not, and I don't wanna burden anybody on here, is rather than invite all them to meet with them, if we could hit 2 in a month. In other words, have economic development, but also then go to the Conservation Commission meeting. You know what I mean? Rather than say we're gonna invite them to our meetings, we're gonna invite ourselves to their meeting.
I think we mentioned that last time, didn't we? The idea that we have liaisons or something similar.
Well, liaisons or something, I do think the full boards need to meet. And, and right now, I mean, as far as planning and zoning, yes, they're on the list, but economic development, we need to talk to the planner, we need to ask them, that's the equivalent of meeting with P and Z, we need to meet with SCROG, we need to meet with conservation.
But
I think we're at information gathering stage, and I think if we have a public meeting, it's premature right now.
Yeah.
Because we don't know what we want to say yet. We're trying to
We
gather
don't have
information.
our own working plan in place.
Yeah.
Right.
We need definite goals to work towards, because
Well,
we've
what-
been around the block with this stuff a few times with the housing committee, so we really need definable goals. And that's not so easy. I know that's not easy to do, but it would help to,
I mean, one approach we could take to get some definable goals would be to identify subjects that we think people need more information about, or that we should generate a position on for promulgation. And that can be done either individually by our commission or in concert with other commissions.
Right, that's right. I mean,
But what would those be? It gives you some focus, what do we want to have, for example, and I don't mean to suggest this is anything but an example, do we want to have a public meeting explaining to people how 830G works, or how, the moratorium gets achieved, or something like that? If we have any sense that people need information, how would we go about getting it to them? And how would we avoid controversy by doing it collectively?
well.
Or not necessarily even avoid controversy, just have more power behind our message.
We might be better off putting out something that was publishable as opposed to having a meeting.
That's
But if you-
another,
if you-
that's
If you
another, that's-
consider the last budget meeting, where they got 70 people in attendance,
I know.
I mean,
Well, sometimes-
It doesn't do us much good to have a meeting and then have nobody come, but if we have materials available, particularly if it's online, they can look.
How about both?
Dominic, don't get me wrong, but I think.
Okay, Mary.
I think one of the major focuses of this group would be to create a situation where we can get a moratorium on buildings like 27 Beach Road.
That's why we need to bring
Right.
Michael Santoro in to discuss and get for the experts, because moratoriums are determined by the Department of Housing. They're not determined by anything else. They're the ones that make the rules that follow, I'm sorry, they're the ones that follow the rules in the statute and make a determination whether you're eligible. So the person that's the expert on moratoriums is Michael Santoro.
Right, but we know enough how this moratorium works,
Yeah,
that we
and
can have a
could,
discussion about it.
the last conversation, Mika has these town meetings, and he really had a very good handle on the whole situation with points in the moratorium. And it's it's out there, it's all in black and white,
Yes.
and we just have to,
It's in
I
one of
hate
these
to
plans I
volunteer,
have in
but,
there.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
that information is already out
It's
there,
a-
but how do we share it with the larger community?
Well, we've got, I agree with David, that should be our goal, and we should move towards that goal. We've
Exactly.
gotta get information first before we share, because we don't wanna go out to the public when we don't know what we're talking about. And
So everybody
and we
study
can get there
those
pretty quick,
rules
but
for
we've
next
gotta,
meeting.
we've gotta get there.
So-
And we'll test each other.
Well,
It's all out there in black and white, so it's just it's a lot of stuff, but it's doable.
Well, you put your finger on the problem. You have to have somebody who volunteers to do it, who is assigned to do it, or some group of people. That's the next step, isn't it?
Mayor, you want to be a committee of two and we'll do it?
I'd do anything with you. But you have to have, I mean, I went to the Conservation Commission and one of the members said, I thought you were going to come here and talk about, how we and the Housing Commission were going to do this panel on ADUs. We think it's a great idea. And I said, I don't have the authority to do that. We haven't decided that we're going to get behind that. So I can tell you what is available if you want to do it by yourself, but I can't tell you that the Housing Commission is doing it because we haven't assigned it yet. That's the step that's missing. Yeah. Maybe I'm too rules bound.
Well, I'm willing to gather it. I mean, I certainly could explain it to anybody how an 8-30G operates and give them a rundown of the Supreme Court cases and everything like that. I don't, and I'm going to just make a statement for the record, I don't think Woodbridge is anywhere close. And I'm talking about years away from a moratorium,
I think
given
that's
our housing.
an important message, don't you?
Yeah, I don't think we're,
I think
and that's what I was
that's-
saying, I don't think we're anywhere near it. I mean, I look at the other towns that are struggling to get it, and I look at what they've built and what they've constructed, and they're getting close. And what was it, who was it? Fairfield. Fairfield just got their moratorium, like a year ago.
They have
And
a
they've
lot
done
more
a lot of
infrastructure.
building.
We may be,
They have a lot
we
more
may be,
infrastructure.
Right.
It's a whole lot easier to build things in
Right,
Fairfield.
exactly. But what I'm saying is, and their goal, they had to go high, but the point is, they built all this stuff. They're not gonna be, we haven't built anything.
no, but Dominic, we may be a while away, we're not gonna get it tomorrow, but if we do nothing, we'll never get it.
Right, but that's the whole point. If we do no building of affordable housing, we're never gonna get it. So we've gotta build affordable housing. I mean, that's a simple, it's about the equivalent of telling you guys that the sun's gonna rise tomorrow morning. If we don't build affordable housing, we're not gonna get a moratorium.
We wouldn't need a moratorium if we weren't building affordable
Housing, right. And then the person in the black robe, you know what I mean, will potentially start dictating to us. So, yes, I will, fine, we can have a conversation on the moratorium. The moratorium should be our things, but I think we need, like, for instance, bringing in the planner and finding out, okay, what are your things, what are your ideas? We're not gonna get it. Let's get realistic. We're not gonna score points having affordable units, affordable AD units. That's not gonna work. Okay, so you're not gonna do that. We just got through discussing the fact that bringing in 100% affordable is probably not realistic in here. Plus the fact that if we were to bring in 100 unit, totally affordable, 100% affordable at 30 to 80% AMI, 3-bedroom units, the problems that we want to address with the school problems and everything like that are going to be substantial, and we're not going to get the economics to pay for it.
I got a mailing, it just jogged my memory. I got a mailing last week about building a new school in anticipation of 100 more students.
Oh, yeah, well,
Right.
there's been,
Those 100 more students are anticipated to come from this housing that we're going to be
no, that's
Oh,
not what
no.
that thing
Where's it
said.
coming
Oh, no, it's coming from
No, that
it's
could
coming
be-
from the existing housing. That's where children come from. They come from neighborhoods rolling over. We can bring the
But
planner in, he'll
No,
tell you that, he'll tell you
No, that
that.
is really not
Yeah.
the issue.
Yeah.
That committee has been in operation for years, there's been a study about, because Beecher is, the current Beecher School is really obsolete. So either you keep
Well-
pouring money into fixing it,
But in
or you
two-
look at building a new
We put $10
school.
million into that school in 2016.
I know.
And they said it'll be good for 20 years. Now, my math says that's only 10 years, you know?
Well,
And that was-
you just have to get new math.
Right,
Yeah.
we're not, okay, we're not the
No, that-
school,
I know.
That
No,
does
you-
not
we're not the
You're right
school
on that.
building committee, and unless you knock down all the 4 and 3 bedroom colonials and 5 bedroom colonials in this house, you're not gonna stop school children from moving in, and you're just not gonna stop that.
We do
And
have.
David, I understand what you're saying, I'm just telling you this, and the planner will tell you this, and everybody will tell you this. The empirical evidence is, high-density residential, limited to 1 and 2 bedroom, pays for whatever school kids, and pays for everybody else's school kids, because they bring in so few school kids. But that's an issue of economic development. You mentioned about economic development and the businesses, and I know we're getting late, but I want to give you an example to explain to you how bringing in industry, bringing in industrial thing is not economic development. I'm involved in a very controversial project over a contractor's yard in Ansonia, where the neighbors are screaming bloody murder, and the attorney who represented them in the past called me up and says, could you step in? You know, you have a thick Italian skin, you can take it. So I went in and I prepared all this presentation. The end of my presentation, as it often is what does this contractor yard, who does rock processing and everything, what do they contribute to the town? So I said to him, give me your taxes that you pay, real estate taxes. I'm assuming your trucks are all their trucks were in a different town than where they have what do you call it, probably a lower tax rate.
Right.
But they had all their equipment there. They had all their rock, these giant
Yeah.
rock processing and sifting machines and everything like that. And I was shocked, and planning and zoning was shocked too. They have 2 or 3 buildings, on the site, and they have a very valuable piece of land, industrial land. They paid $27,000 in taxes on their land. They pay $148,000 in taxes on their equipment.
Equipment, yeah.
When you're talking about industry, it's what's inside the building that pays the taxes, not what's outside the building. The other thing that's beneficial in economic development is the number of people that are employed in that building, which is because they have money in their pocket and they spend. And that is the conversation I want to have, because you can talk all you want about ribbon cutting for a new nail salon or a new thing, you're bringing businesses into town. That isn't economic development. Economic development is bringing something into town that increases your grant list and
Right.
therefore increases your taxes. That's what economic development is. And people who are going to spend money in your town, in your businesses. Because contrary to what people believe, businesses follow the people, not people follow the businesses. It's the other way around. But I think I'm going to contact the planner. I'm going to contact the planner. I am going to, rather than scarf him up, I'm probably going to ask if I can have attend our June meeting. I'm going to make this suggestion, unless Ian says he's ready to come and he's hired the person. I'm going to ask. I would like to ask the planner and ask the chairman of P&Z if he and one other member from P&Z would like to attend our June meeting. Is that a good suggestion, Teva?
I wonder if they'll have the bandwidth until after July 1st.
What?
I wonder if they'll have the bandwidth until after July 1st.
Well, they're gonna.
I mean,
I
if
mean,
they
we're
run
just talking
into
about having
some,
a couple people, and the planner and him attend. The reason I got to be careful about the planner is
you can always invite them.
he costs money. They're probably billing by the hour. So
Oh, really? To
Oh,
come
no,
to a
not
commission meeting?
necessarily, no.
You're saying he would charge us?
I don't know what the contract. I don't know what the
They
contract
work
is.
for free.
I don't know what the contract is.
Well,
with the
my-
planner.
Goodness, I
my
didn't.
It's a
under-
private company, so some of them charge by the hour.
I believe,
Some of them are on a
Okay.
flat fee.
I don't remember if it was he or somebody else, but he explained that they have a contract, and within that contract, they don't charge you extra.
Okay.
So you can ask the question,
How
ask
long
the
is that
question.
contract?
Huh?
What's the duration of the contract?
I don't know.
I don't know.
I mean, but you're gonna ask him, is this gonna cost us money?
Well, no,
I
I
was,
just,
wasn't so worried about that, is I'm just curious, so here we're relying on outside sources, and I wonder who defines the people and how we pay for it. Used to be we had a town planner. He was an employee of the town.
Yeah, wouldn't that be nice?
He was
Well-
good.
problem,
Well-
yeah, Terry was very good, but.
Well, that wasn't
they-
Terry.
Oh.
I'm thinking of Sam Spielvogel.
Sam's Field, oh my gosh, we really go back. huh?
Yeah, well,
Yeah, fine.
Dominic, who are you suggesting? P and Z, the planner, and who was the third one?
No.
Scrog?
Scrog separately.
No, I'm talking about inviting the
Smart
planner,
Center.
but inviting him along with the chairman and maybe one other member of P and Z. So, to have a discussion with them without the whole P and Z board.
That's fine.
Assuming they're able to do it at our, and have it at the June meeting.
And then EDC as well?
I don't want to have them all on that one night, you know what I mean? If we're talking with the planner, would you rather go with EDC first?
Well,
Before
see,
them?
I think we need to contact EDC, whether you do it at a formal meeting or
Yeah.
whether you do it with the chairman of that committee.
Well, EDC, I was actually,
I mean, I could call Bob Hill.
yeah, for EDC, I was thinking of having a joint meeting with them. Not just
Not just
inviting
one
someone.
person.
So,
let's
the-
not get the planner in here with anybody else.
Yeah, no,
I agree.
I
We'll
think.
pay.
No, I only
Hey,
suggested P
you'll
and
pay it
Z.
him.
Yeah, I wanted him there with the P and Z chairman, because that's who they work with. The planner works with planning and zoning.
So, I'm trying to imagine what we're gonna ask the or tell the planner we're going to ask him to come and talk to us about. So, I would imagine it would be what his experience has been, what they're working with TP&C and so forth, and thinking about our regs from the perspective of
No, I'm not
housing.
gonna get that.
Yeah, I'd
My
want to know what
suggestion-
happened in December. That would be my big question. How'd that happen?
What happened in December?
Oh, just some legislation that allowed a building to
Oh,
exist down on Fountain Street.
okay, and
Well, I mean, I
Well,
don't think we should
that's-
be, I don't think we should be hanging. My feeling with the planner, really, and the TP and Z, and the chairman is, I would have actually a question for them. What do you expect out of us?
Precisely.
What is your expectation out of us?
Precisely, what
That's a
can
good
we
question.
do?
Huh?
That's a good
Yeah.
question.
Yeah, what
How do
can
you
we
expect
do?
us, we are going through all of this stuff. We're gonna be doing the housing growth plan. Here's some of the things in the housing growth plan.
Uh-huh.
We're gonna be working with the scribe. What do you expect out of us?
that's a good question.
See,
And-
historically, what we're thinking about doing used to be done by planning and zoning.
Yeah.
That was a regular consideration.
Because they were
Well,
planners as
okay.
well as zoning
Remember,
And
regulators.
they're
planning
called-
and zoning,
yeah,
and
they're
it
called
happened as
planning
a
and
matter of
zoning,
course in the
and-
Planning and Zoning Commission. And somewhere along the line,
They
those
just
wheels fell
dropped
off.
that,
That's
right?
because
That's a
the
good
state was
analogy.
requiring a housing report. That's why the housing committee was formed in the first place, to comply with state mandate for a report that we did, a whole 96-page report. Dominic was the chair then, right?
Yeah.
You were our chair then. So that's how that happened.
Okay?
And then we,
But I mean, what Becca's saying, he's correct. In the past,
no, we.
you had, and other towns have planning commissions and zoning commissions.
Right.
A lot of P and Zs have become just zoning, although they deal with planning when they deal with subdivisions and when they deal with text changes and map changes. The reason we are where we are is because there's an enormous empirical housing shortage in the state of Connecticut. And so now the state has, after battling back and forth, the state has taken the attitude that all the towns have to contribute to it in some fashion. And this is what has happened because of the fair share thing that did not go through with it, that they were going to pass. And they said, okay, fine, then you're all going to do a plan. Now, Woodbridge's only other issue is that I don't mean to pat myself on the back, but as I predicted when we did the housing committee, affordable housing report, that Woodbridge was going to be targeted as a Mount Laurel property. We are.
I do remember you saying
We
that.
are, if they were going to do a movie called Mount Laurel, Woodbridge would be called for casting to be Mount Laurel. This is what we do, because when you look at what it was so it was we're a perfect example. We cannot operate without that in the back of our mind, that there is legislation. But we also can't let that control us. We have to go forward and get.
There is some good news on Lucy Street. You know, the housing on Lucy Street
Yes.
has been taken over by a new
Yes.
development company, and that, I think that will be all affordable.
They renewed
It'll
it.
give us about
Yeah.
27 points.
The
or
40
something.
years.
You know, if the state of Connecticut really wanted housing to be more affordable, they'd raise the minimum wage. Because nobody addresses that problem. It's not for us to
Well,
talk about.
Connecticut has.
But that's a realistic
Yeah.
issue. You know, the
Oh,
cost of
yeah.
housing has gone way up, and the amount of money people earn has not. And that's why we're partly in this situation.
I disagree. I think what the essential problem is that there aren't any units to put those richer people into.
Well, that too.
I mean,
That's our job.
we need to have a
Okay.
conversation with a lot of the town. What is your preference, to bring in planner, P and Z chair to talk to us, or to bring in economic development first? My feeling is the planner and the P and Z.
Planner
And say,
and
what do you
P&Z.
expect out of us?
Yeah, give
But not,
us,
Okay.
Well, the
not,
P&Z
not the whole committee,
The
though.
P&Z.
Not the chairman, I'm talking about I'm not
Yeah.
the committee, I'm
Because
talking
we did a
about.
joint meeting with we did a joint meeting with them one point, and it was terrible. Housing got the kids' table, and we didn't get to say much, and, you know.
What are we gonna get from the planner, other than a bill?
No,
No, well, the Taish, they're a very, very,
I'm not questioning that. What are we gonna get from him, though, that we can't get from the
Housing.
people that employ him?
housing issues, I mean, we can report that we have looked at housing trust fund, look at housing 100% affordable housing, and ask him, what should we, as a commission, what should we be, what do you think, for the housing commission,
As
what
a
do you think we
consultant.
should be looking at with respect to
Doesn't work
the
for us.
housing growth plan?
Doesn't work for us.
What?
He's gonna give us an answer that has to do with planning and zoning, not with us.
Well, we can't.
They
We have to
pay him.
operate with planning and zoning, because we can identify all the properties in the state, in the city that we want, but if the zoning isn't set up to allow housing on it, it doesn't work. So that's the problem.
But-
So if we want housing, just to have a conversation with him about what we talked about tonight. If we wanted to suggest that we would like high-density housing, in the property that we talked about behind Grimaldi's and everything like
right.
that, what will we have to do? What do you think what do you think about that? And what will we have to do to change the zoning? What would you have to do, and the TPC have to do, to change the zoning regulations that would allow that would entice a developer to come in and do that, and give us 100 units with 20% affordable at 80% AMI, which is what we want to do.
yeah, the more, I think we should ask him what he thinks we should be doing. I mean, think about it, he made a proposal to the TP&Z in January, and that includes some things that they think that Woodbridge should be doing to address the housing problem. We still don't even have that on paper. You know, we really need to know what's going on, what they're
But-
thinking
But
about.
planning and zoning has it.
Planning and zoning
They have that
has it.
report.
I have it, because I got it.
Oh, see, you have it. Well,
I have it, but
we-
this.
do we have
But
it?
this group has not had it presented to them,
Oh.
has not.
send it to
Well,
us.
so send it to us,
Mary.
Mary.
There
It's
is no problem
pretty
with doing
simple.
No, I don't
And
even
you
You're
can-
the secretary,
even
send
know.
it to us.
Mary, as you can tell
I'll
by
find
the
out if
six,
it's still up to date.
by the 6 items, just so you know it, and I didn't want to overwhelm it, every time there's a housing article done and a housing study done, I'm on the Connecticut Mayor, of course, I'm also on the Connecticut Bar Association Executive Committee for Housing, and I'm on the CBIA Steering Committee. I'm the only lawyer. So every time I get something with that, it gets saved under the Woodbridge Housing Committee folder in my committee. I mean, I chose very carefully to limit it to the 6 items that I sent to you, rather than
Thank you.
dump all this stuff on you
was interesting.
all at once. I mean, all the postmortems on the
It's
legislature.
okay to have a filter.
Yeah, right, exactly. So anyway, I'm gonna proceed with that. I'm gonna check with the planner, check with P and Z. I'm also gonna see on economic development is whether or not, if what their schedule is, and whether or not we can have a joint meeting with us going to them. Yeah, meaning us going
If we
to,
on
on the night of their meeting, so we don't have to wait to another meeting.
I just have one more thought. Would it be worthwhile looking at that Yale plan for the downtown area? You familiar with that plan?
No.
You mean the new one, where they want to
No, the one that they did in, 1700, whatever it was. It did it seriously, about 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And they had, a plan for the
Oh,
downtown with housing above stores, and a lot of it was.
You're talking about,
Yeah.
they did a plan for Woodbridge's commercial area.
Yeah, it was
Yes.
done by,
Yes. It was done by the Yale School of
it was
Architecture.
done by the school, no, that one wasn't done by architecture, I think it was done by public policy or something else like
Okay.
that. I was
School
just
of
looking-
Management?
School of,
School of
no,
Management? No.
no, it was like public health. It was public health, believe it or not.
But
It
yeah,
just
they had
came
a nice
across-
plan with drawings and
Yeah.
Was it presented to was there
Oh, yeah.
a vote on it, a referendum, or was
No.
it presented to
well,
BOS, or
as I recall, some of the buildings were 3 stories, and that
was it a deal breaker?
that didn't fly. That was a deal breaker. Yeah,
The 3 stories?
the 3 stories.
Well, we're at
Okay.
6 now, so.
Well, that was
Three's-
down-
three's
that was
easy.
downtown.
Yeah, but
2029
if you're gonna be bothered by 3 stories in downtown, then you're not gonna get any developers to come in and do anything.
Right.
You're not gonna do it they won't
So-
come in.
So you want to see this?
Well, I'm wondering if it's worthwhile to look at it and see. if
Oh,
there's-
It's
absolutely.
always interesting.
We can
It's always
take,
interesting
take
to do
out of
that.
it. But, your idea of taking a property like the Andreas lot and putting a large building on there, and that, to me, makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, it does.
The developer, I hate to say this, you can comment that developers would rather, a lot of them would rather go, too, and
No question.
yeah, they were, now, there will be decisions, my clients have made decisions that I had to scratch my head at when they said, like the developers for Fountain Square to resolve their PDD proposal for affordable, for 8-30G. They were gonna do 170 units, and then along came Trader Joe's, so they knocked it down to 100 units. And we were still working on getting them 140, 130 units. But then they came to me and said, no, let's settle for 100, and we'll give them 20 affordable, 10 at 80 and 10 at 60. These guys are from New Jersey, so giving affordable units is second nature to them. And I said, okay, just want to tell me why you're just, that's great, that makes my job easier, why you're gonna do it. And they said, because to go to higher than 100 units, we have to go to that extra floor. What's the thing? When you go to the extra floor, then it was steel.
Oh,
You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it was. It involved on
It-
that small parcel going
That's
to
all
that
changing
extra
though
floor.
now. You can, they have ways now, you can do 2 stories of parking with a concrete lid, and then it's essentially you're starting from scratch, and you can go up 4 or 5
Well,
stories
that's what they
without.
did. They had one. They had
without
one.
an
They had
issue.
parking under,
Yeah,
and then 4 stories on top. But to go to
the 5th story.
the 5th story on top meant a building. They said, no, we're not going to bother.
A lot of it has to do with the square footage, because you mentioned FAR before.
Yeah.
There are the restrictions that exist in the building code and building type have to do with how large your floor plates are and what the use is. And then what materials you choose to use. It's a balancing
Right.
act.
But David, even if it's not you have to make it economically feasible, but even if there's a large enough parcel, somebody will come in and they may do four three-story buildings, you know what I mean? And stuff like that. It's just, when people say, as they said at my hearing the other night, on an apartment complex, a zone change for put 104 apartments in Seymour, and they all got up and said, it's just greed, all it is greed. And I get up and I tell them, I've been doing this for 40 years, and I have never been hired by any developer who said, Dominic, I'd like you, I don't want to make any money.
Yeah,
from
give
this."
it away.
Nobody ever said that to me, you know?
Yale School of Urban Design. My wife just
Great.
texted-
Was
Was
Yes.
it urban,
My wife
oh,
just
that's
texted me.
different.
You know what?
2008.
I remember
That's
that
different.
plan. When was
Yeah.
that? When is it?
2008. So-
Okay, that's right, because I bought in Woodbridge in
Oh.
2005, and I remember something about
I
that.
don't remember that, wow.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
other one's earlier even. You're right. It was like 70s.
Guys, I hate to be rude, but it's 10 of 9.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
All right,
Okay.
well, I'm gonna focus on planner and planning, P and Z, and economic development, and trying to set up for our next meeting.
Great.
And I'll try not to overwhelm you with any new stuff, and me and my good
So-
friend Claude AI from
So Thursday is the list
The tour,
tour.
yep.
Yep. I'm not unfortunately able to go on that.
Okay,
Oh, can I have a motion to
so-
adjourn?
So,
So moved.
Have a second?
I second.
Okay.
Lou and I.
and it's,
Who's going to the
yeah, we
meeting?
gotta.